When you're in your mid-20s, you really only have three options.
Get married,
Get a master's,
or run a marathon.
Hi, I'm Francis,
And I'm Brian,
and welcome to this week's episode of the Zone 2 podcast.
where we explore all there is to learn about the world of running.
Spring in the Northeast, a tale as old as time. I feel like Mother Nature keeps playing the same cruel joke on us. I finally decided to pack away all of my cold weather gear and fully embrace the spring, and then Boston decides to throw me a 30-degree day filled with rain and sadness. But we persist, and we still go out and we put in the work. How's your training been, Brian?
Francis, thanks so much for asking. I had a 52-mile week this week, my longest week to date, which felt like a huge milestone. That being said, I did have some tough runs this week. On Monday, speaking of these 30-degree days, it was 30-ish, rainy. I decided to wait until the evening to go for my run, so I probably went at about 8 o'clock when the rain finally stopped. It was mid-30s, so I did bust out the leggings again, even though I said in a previous episode I would not be doing that. And I failed to account for the fact that it was about 95% humidity, and I was drenched in sweat by the time I got to the end of my street. This was a all-around terrible run, also probably the closest I've ever been to calling an Uber for myself and getting a ride home from the Esplanade. This might be too much information, but you chose to listen to this, so I don't care. But I was fighting for my life in the porta potty on the Esplanade, texting Francis, telling him all about it, and it was pretty rough. I will be honest, I didn't want to do it. It was a little bit discouraging. Then Tuesday, I had a really hard workout, and the run felt fantastic. It was night and day compared to my near Code Brown the day before. I did 6 long hill repeats on Lowell Street in Somerville, and then a 3-mile progression on the Somerville Community Path. It was a lovely evening. Everybody was out enjoying the sun. I had a great run, night and day compared to the day before. I had a good rest of the week and capped it off with a 22-mile long run with Paul and Will. We went from the Boston start line all the way to Cleveland Circle, did about 5 miles warm up, and then the rest at marathon goal pace or shooting for marathon goal pace. Felt a bit like I hit a wall around the Newton Hills, but it was a really tough, it was a tough long run.
Yeah, but you made it.
I did make it. It was also energized by some familiar faces on ComAv, including last week's guest, Nora Johnson, who I had the pleasure of running up, I think, most of one of the Newton Hills. We ran side by side, and then I had to keep the pace, so I booked it. I regretted keeping the pace. It was a little rough, but very sore today. And I also feel like I'm in a little bit of rare form, perhaps, after working a shift today. So you're going to get to see that on the podcast. But that was my week. Francis, how was your week?
My week was pretty good. I feel like I've talked about injuries, and I know your IT band's hurting. And I feel like all this running that we're doing, our bodies are slowly starting to fall apart. We're not as young as we used to be.
We're old men.
Yeah, I know. We're in our later years, our twilight years. But I feel like if it's not one thing, it's something else. And so I've been having some toe pain recently. And so just trying to keep it easy, trying not to do a ton of speed workout. But I had a run on Monday in the rain as well. I thought it went really well, all things considered, though. I saw a lot of people out, and I feel like when you're out in the rain and running, you kind of are obligated to acknowledge other people because they're out as well. So I gave a lot of people the old runner nod where you just sort of like, incline your head to them. I also ran into Ted Trzynski, one of our first guests on the podcast, which was really cool, and we ran together for about 45 yards, and then he peeled off, but it was still really great to see him out. And then Tuesday morning, just to kind of fit in some early morning miles, I decided to run at 5:30 in the morning, which is new for me, but I'm trying to get used to it in preparation for the summer, because I know once the temperature starts to hover around the 80s, it's going to be really uncomfortable to run past noon. So trying to be a morning person, we'll see how that goes.
I'll believe it when I see it.
It was nice being up that early, though. It was nice to kind of see the whole city before anyone else, really.
Yeah, there's no reason to be up that early.
There's no reason to be up that early, but it was nice to kind of feel better than everyone else. So
that's where this is
I think that's the only reason to get up that early, is to feel better. So if you're a morning person and you go on your runs in the morning, we know why you actually do it. It has nothing to do with scheduling or anything like that, or trying to get a good start to the day. No, it's because you want to feel better than everyone else. And then I did an easy 8 on Wednesday. I was supposed to do a speed workout, but again, with my toe hurting, I decided to kind of call an audible and just do an easy 8. Again, did a Friday easy 5, and then did a 10-miler on Saturday. But yeah, that was my training. But you did 22 miles for your long run, and that's, first of all, super impressive. I know it's like your second 20 run, and I think that probably is a good indication of your fitness, that you were, one, able to do it, and two, not completely hitting the wall.
It felt pretty close. That last mile or so, I was talking to God.
Well, I feel like hitting the wall, a lot of that has to do with the levels of nutrients in your body.
It does, Francis, and it's so funny that you mentioned that, because our guest tonight just so happens to be studying to be a professional nutritionist. So on that note, let's welcome Nike Women's Running Ambassador, friend by association of our former guest Kate Schultz, and future dietitian currently in school, Lily Toussaint, all the way from Dallas, Texas. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So, Lily, thanks again for coming on the pod. This is really cool. So I know Brian and I are both really keen to kind of hear your take on nutrition and really pick your brain in that area, because I feel like that's something that neither of us really has any expertise in. But before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about how you first got started in running?
Yeah, so basically, I started cross country my sophomore year of high school. Before that, I kind of only ran with an intent for like scoring a goal or getting back on defense. So like I played basketball, I did soccer, I did a whole bunch of sports growing up. Didn't really see a value of running to run. But in the high school that I went to, it was very small. So if you had even like an ounce of athleticism, you were kind of recruited for at least one sport every season. And my freshman year, I did volleyball. It didn't work out so great. So I did cross country my sophomore year. I didn't start off super fast or anything, but just being with a team, working with a coach on like speed and different agility workouts and things like that, like kind of, I don't know, just built a love of running to run, and like getting to the finish line and seeing those kind of goals, and setting like, it was more of like a mental challenge, I think, for me to like take on. And so that was exciting. And so since then, I've kind of just been running pretty consistently. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you mentioned that. And I feel like that's a theme that we've noticed with our guests in the past, is that a lot of them have this background of being an athlete in another sport and using running only as a means to stay in shape for that sport, whether it's soccer, basketball, or you name it. And I feel like one of the themes is that they discover running, they do it to stay in shape, but then they fall in love with it. And I find that interesting because it's a very non-traditional sport in a lot of ways, especially when you compare it to other team sports.
I was going to say, I think running is also like the benefit is that it's a lot more individual. Like you don't necessarily need a team in order to do it. So after high school, after you graduate, you don't have to have like those organized sports anymore. So it's something that you can kind of just fit into your schedule whenever and set individual goals for yourself, which is something that I really like and enjoy. So
yeah, that's a really amazing story, and I personally love hearing everyone's different stories about kind of how they found running, and it's so cool. Like you said, it is an individual sport. It's really cool that you're able to kind of set your own goals within running, but everyone finds their way here a different way. So that's really awesome. Can you talk a little bit about how you made that transition, I guess, into, like, I know you've done a couple races now. You also are similar to Kate, who was our first ever guest on the podcast. You are a Nike Women's Running Ambassador as well. So can you talk a little bit about your transition from the running that you were just speaking about to, I guess, running with regards to those different activities?
So for transitioning to like the longer races, I definitely had to build more of like a community, and I trained for my first marathon last year with a really good friend of mine at UNC. So just having that accountability, having someone to like work with and train with was a huge like difference maker, just because I would not have been able to like motivate myself to go out and run for 3 hours. And, it's just like having people to lean on for support whenever things get hard is important. And then in terms of the transition to being a Nike athlete, they really didn't set many goals for us in particular, like in in terms of how many miles we needed to run per week or how many like races we needed to do. It was kind of just keep doing what you're doing and hopefully encourage young female athletes who are interested in getting into the sport to kind of start running for themselves. So I think like their goal, I don't want to speak for them, but from what I understand is that the purpose of the program was to inspire a love of running in the young female athletes. So it wasn't like you have to do this or you have to reach this goal or you have to run this fast or anything. Like they wanted to get real people and not necessarily like influencers who are just like paid to do whatever. They wanted real people to inspire people to do things, show them that they can also do it and not be like super famous or anything like that. They don't need any super special equipment. But I will say like the training has been a little bit different with Nike because they've set us up with the Nike Run Club app, which I believe is free for anyone to use. And you can kind of like do training programs and have some coaching, which is exciting. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. I think expanding on that,
Okay.
so you said how this Nike partnership now has changed how you train a little bit. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? I guess just shed a little bit of light on the resources that Nike's given you access to from a training standpoint. Kate, I know, has told us a little bit about the equipment and having like clothes and equipment and shoes to get out running, I feel like makes a big difference. So I was curious if you could just shed a little bit more light on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for training purposes, we through the Run Club app, it's about one long run per week and then two kind of training runs. And then I run every day. So every other day I do recovery runs about 4 miles and just like an easy pace, like 8:45 to 9:30. But the training runs are like a speed workout or a tempo run or a hill workout or things like that. And they'll have coaches, like university level coaches, cross country coaches, kind of like talking you through the workout, which is really helpful. And they'll be like, okay, speed up now. Like this is the effort you're going for. This is you take your break now. And they'll kind of be with you through the entire workout, which I find helpful just to kind of keep me on pace, keep me focused, keep me locked in, especially whenever I'm going out for a run by myself. But then on the flip side, also the equipment is really nice. Like the shoes, I don't have to run with like no tread on my shoes anymore. So I used to like just kind of like run until the shoes were dead. So it's nice to finally have like a shoe rotation for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like as people who are both new to the running scene, the whole shoe universe is really incredible. The amount of brands that are popping up every day, it seems, and the different models of shoes that they have available. I was talking to Kate the other day about her Vaporflies, and she was saying it's like running with magic dust on your feet. And it's really cool to see a company like Nike supporting amateur runners and giving them the tools they need in order to succeed and meet their goals. And obviously, as important as shoes are for a runner, you cannot discount proper nutrition. I feel like I've gone on runs where I felt awful simply because I didn't eat the right stuff or I didn't eat enough prior. And there are runs where I've had a really hard and tough workout, but because I'm fueling properly and putting the right stuff in my body, I sometimes don't even feel it the next day. And so as someone who's in school for nutrition and as someone who is a sponsored runner, what are the things that people need to keep in mind when it comes to nourishing for running specifically?
Yeah, I think it's important to properly, I think a lot of athletes or people who are starting in the sport kind of see one specific body type and think, oh, I need to look like that, or I need to be small and light in order to go faster, which like, according to physics, that makes sense. But like if you're cutting down calories and not eating enough, then you're also not giving your body enough energy to do the things that you need it to do. So it comes at a huge sacrifice if you're trying to like lose weight through running. It's not really the right idea or mentality to go into the sport for. Honestly, like under fueling, you're not going to recover after your runs. You're not going to rebuild the muscle that gets broken down whenever you're doing strenuous activity. You're not going to give your brain enough energy to like think really because your brain uses glucose. So if you're not eating carbs, if you're cutting out bread because you think it's bad for you, like those things are unhelpful in order to progress in the sport. And then also in terms of hydration, it's also important. Like a lot of people, including myself, will often reach for like plain water to drink after like a long run. And you really, if you're sweating a lot, then you're going to need to have sodium and other electrolytes and things to replenish. And so that's also important. Yeah.
So I know in the form you filled out before coming on the pod, you mentioned that one of the topics you really wanted to touch on was the difference between a nutritionist and a dietitian. Can you break down the differences between the two and what the requirements are for both?
Yeah, so a nutritionist can be anyone, like on the internet. There are lots of social media nutritionists. You don't need any certification or credentials or anything. You can just say that you're interested in nutrition and be a nutritionist. A dietitian is someone who has a degree in nutrition, has had 1,200 hours of internship experience in a clinical, community, and food service setting. Now they're required to have a master's degree. So it's someone that has like actual credentialing. You have to pass an RD exam. So if you are looking for nutrition advice, look for someone who has an RD after their name and not a nutritionist.
Even if it's on TikTok, look for someone with the RD.
Yes.
That's super fascinating. Francis, I'm sure you do too, but I have obviously just a million questions about the nutrition side of running. I notice big differences based on how my runs feel from what I eat the week leading up to it. Something I've seen on talking about social media and people without credentials, something I've seen on social media is this idea of carboloading. Like that's not like the night before you run, you eat a bunch of carbs. That happens in the days leading up to it. Can you tell us a little bit about carboloading from what you've learned while you're in school?
So yeah, I want to preface this by saying we haven't had a sports nutrition specific class. So everything that I'm going to talk about is from personal experience and what I've learned in my internship in undergrad with the UNC football team. But yes, in general, dietary patterns are more effective and important than just immediate changes. Like if you do it one or two times, it's not really going to impact your overall health or how you feel during a run. You kind of have to just practice what you're doing the entire time. Like one of my preceptors was saying, diets only work if you continue them. Like if you do it for 3 months and stop, it's not going to be effective. It's not going to help you feel better or whatever. Like as soon as you finish it and go back to normal, it's every issue is going to come right back. So, being consistent with what you're doing is going to be the most impact. And for carbo loading in particular, like if you're wanting to build up your glycogen stores, which is kind of the idea behind it, you're going to need more time than just 12 hours before your run. So that's kind of why you would need to start out a little bit farther in advance before a big run.
So you talk about carb loading in the days leading up to a race, but what can someone like myself do in order to fuel for their weekly runs? So if I'm going out tomorrow for a long run and, I wake up in the morning and I'm going to run at 10:30 and it's 9 o'clock, what should I eat to prepare? Or I guess to gear the question towards you, what is something that you eat right before your runs?
So for me personally, this is not recommended because generally you're supposed to eat 2 hours before and then 30 minutes before have a quick digesting carb. My stomach doesn't like food before activity, which is not helpful, but yeah, in general, 2 hours before have something that's a little bit slower to digest, like oatmeal or a sandwich or something like that. And then 20 to 30 minutes before you're running, have a banana or an applesauce or something that's a little bit quicker to digest that won't sit in your stomach. And it will just give you a little bit more energy whenever you're running.
Lily, it was interesting hearing you talk about consistency with your diet. And I'm curious if this is something you've found training for the races you've ran recently, but I'm finding this is my first marathon training cycle, and I'm finding that I simply cannot get enough food in my body. And I think that makes it really hard to be consistent, especially when you talk about in the afternoon, after my long run, my body is just in such a calorie deficit and I feel like I want to eat everything that's in front of me. And that consistency is just so hard to find. I feel like in that space, just I'll go to the grocery store and buy food for the week and it's gone. Sometimes it's gone in 3 days just because I literally feel like I can't get enough food in my body. Do you think that, and this is, I guess, leaning into that scientific side of things, but do you think that is that's a reflection of the breakdown of what I'm eating, or do you think that's just a result of your body being in such a state where you have such a high metabolic demand after burning so many calories?
So yeah, it's actually going to be a little bit of both. In terms of the breakdown of what you're eating, if you want to prolong your hunger, so if you're eating a meal and you don't want to be hungry again for a little bit longer, I would definitely recommend prioritizing protein, fat, and complex carbohydrates. So oatmeal, whole grain pasta, brown rice, things that take a little bit longer to digest, starchy vegetables, kind of leaning away from fruits and vegetables, but also keep in mind that those are still very important in your diet. So this is not just general recommendation. This is only if you're wanting to not eat again for a while. And you can obviously still eat fruits and vegetables as part of that meal, but just make sure that you have some components that take a little bit longer to digest and that will sit in your stomach for longer, because that's ultimately what is going to keep you full for longer. There is a much higher metabolic demand if you're marathon training, just because, yes, you have that component of your activity level, but then you also, after your runs, you're still burning additional calories. You're still rebuilding that muscle that you've broken down. You're still kind of in that recovery stage that you'll need more energy to help your body through. So yes to both. And definitely, if you're hungry, you need to eat. Like for me, I gained weight during my marathon because I was hungry all the time. And if that's what you need to do in order to reach your marathon goals, then absolutely just like honor your body and what it needs.
So I feel like we jumped right into the nutrition questions. You could probably tell Francis and I are super excited to ask questions about this. Let's take a step back, and I'm curious if you could tell us a little about your background and how you found your way into this field and what you're actually studying right now.
Yeah, so in high school, I developed a little bit of an unhealthy relationship with food and body image and things of that nature, and kind of became hyper fixated on what I was eating, what I was cooking and home, and I would control like all the meals and everything that my family would eat. And so that kind of experience led into what I was interested in and what I was spending most of my time researching and studying. And so, I figured might as well make a career out of this and kind of help people who were in similar situations avoid getting to that point. And so for me, what I'm studying right now is clinical nutrition, and I'm interested in working in pediatrics. I haven't decided whether or not I want to work in eating disorders in particular, or if I want to like start in the NICU. And kind of help develop the infant formulas or like do all those calculations for the premature infants, because I love babies, so I feel like that sounds so fun. But that's kind of where I got started and what I'm doing now. And then the future is still unknown. We'll see.
That's such a great story, Lily. Thanks for sharing that. I feel like eating disorders are one of those things that are all too familiar in endurance sports, and especially with female athletes. And I think it's really important to shed light on that as much as possible. And kind of going off of that, do you think that there are pretty significant discrepancies between the nutritional requirements for female athletes as opposed to male athletes?
I don't know if there's a huge difference in like the macronutrient composition of diets. Like everyone needs between 45 and 60% carbohydrates, 10 to 35% protein, 25 to 35% fat. But in terms of the micronutrients, women do need more iron just because of menstruation. And then calcium.
Kate knows about needing more iron. We know you're listening, Kate.
I hope you're using that iron Snoopy.
Yeah, Francis bought Kate. So Kate's, I don't know if this is a HIPAA violation. She told us as a friend, Kate's iron was like, it was like critically low. Like she needed iron in her system.
Iron Man.
And Francis bought Kate this little iron Snoopy that you put in your water. Like if you're like cooking pasta or something, you put it in the water and you boil, and I guess a little bit of iron, a little bit of iron comes off the Snoopy into the water, and then whatever you eat is like
Extra iron.
It's just bonus iron. So
It's like cooking in a cast iron skillet, basically, but for
anything that you eat.
Anything.
Yeah. Sorry to derail you, but the iron's super relevant.
That's super cool. I've never heard of that before. That's awesome. I'll have to like look into it and maybe recommend it to patients that we see if they're iron deficient. But yeah, so iron is important. One of the better sources for iron is actually animal products. I don't want to get too like in the nitty gritty of the scientific details, but the iron form that's in animal products is more easily digested than in plants. And then you also need calcium and vitamin D for bone health. And that's really important, especially for long distance runners, because bones tend to get more, like less dense if you're not doing resistance training, which is also another recommendation. Sorry. So yeah, those are the main recommendations.
It's really interesting hearing your perspectives from the clinical dietitian side of things. So I'm in nursing school right now, and a lot of what we have learned in our adults and pediatric nursing classes is related to nutrition and nutritional needs of patients, especially when they're going through this healing process. Something I think a little bit about, and you can correct me if I'm off base, but when you're going through a marathon training cycle, you are putting so much stress on your bones, on your joints, on your muscles, that you are almost in a constant state of healing. And I think that's interesting, and that's something that I feel like I think about when I'm trying to get myself the nutrition that I need. Is it's not just, obviously it's about calories, but it's not just about calories. You need these nutrients to repair this tissue that you're damaging, because you really are, for this 5-month training cycle, just in a constant state of healing. Sort of similar to being a patient in a way. Sometimes when I get back from a run, I feel hungry, like my body feels hungry, like I want to eat, but like the actual prospect of eating food just doesn't sit with me. So sometimes I wish that I could just get like a tube feed, or like I could get nutrition without the having to eat. It also takes so much time to eat, and I find that having such a busy schedule where you have work, you have school, you have 50, 60 miles plus per week that you're running, trying to fit all this together, and then also trying to meal plan and make sure that you're getting enough nutrients and enough calories in your diet is actually an impossible task. So I wish that there was just a smoothie option where I could like just drink something once a day and that have everything that I needed for the day. But obviously it doesn't work like that.
Isn't there like, aren't there products like nutritionally complete meals in smoothie form? Like Huel?
Like Boost, Ensure.
Are
all the
those
ones.
nutritionally complete?
I'm pretty sure they're intended as meal replacement shakes for people who are not getting enough in their diet. So I would assume, but I don't know. I don't drink them myself.
I
So
wonder. So when you talk about fiber, and obviously fiber is really important when you talk about the rate of carbohydrate absorption in the gut, I have read, and I'm curious about your clinical perspective. So I've read that if you juice a fruit, like let's say you have like an apple versus if you juice an apple and you drink apple juice, you're missing out on all that fiber because it's broken down in the crushing or the blending process or like the squeezing of the juice out of the apple. So even though you might be getting the same carbohydrates from it, it's significantly affecting the rate of absorption. I'm curious what you know about that and if you could tell us a little bit more.
yeah, so it's partially true that the crushing and blending of the actual apple, I guess flesh or meat of the apple, but most of the fiber that's in an apple is in the skin. So if you're juicing it, you're not getting the skin, and that's kind of where that comes from.
Interesting. So I wonder if these dietary supplements, or what's the word that you're talking about? Like it's like all nutrition smoothie or whatever.
Meal replacements.
A meal replacement, if it has adequate fiber as well, and how that would affect the rate of like carb reabsorption.
Just from my own experience, because I've tried Huel, it has like bits in it. Like it's a little weird. It's not for everyone.
Like it's curdled.
No, it's like there's like seeds and like there's plant matter in there, and it's definitely like Gordon Ramsay would give it a 0 out of 10. Like it gets the job done, but it's not the same as like actually eating. But if you need the calories, then and you need like to have like a third meal in the middle of the day, like before dinner, like this would work.
There's also there's supplements for fiber. So like Metamucil, Miralax, those things are fiber that you can like add to a smoothie or a shake if you need to get the extra fiber.
Take Miralax before you run.
Yeah, do you think that'd be a mistake to take that before
Don't do it.
on the morning of your race? Yeah, I'll have my espresso
Not
and my
recommending
Miralax.
that.
Yeah, the race.
No.
Pull a Davis Clark. That's a niche reference for people who live in Boston or who are aware.
Oh my goodness.
Definitely do not take any of those on the morning before your run.
Okay, and that's professional advice, people. Don't be, people will remember you.
Yeah.
This is all super interesting. So I guess to circle back, in total, do you have any like single one piece of nutrition advice for runners? If you were going to have one takeaway listening to this that you feel like somebody would want to integrate into their nutrition plan.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, just get enough food. That is imperative. And then getting enough protein in order to rebuild the muscle tissue that's broken down whenever you're doing your runs. Just because, like you said, you're in a constant state basically of recovery. And getting protein is important to recover. So those are the two things I would say.
Lily, do you use gels?
I did whenever I have had them. I don't have any anymore, but I'm also not like training for a marathon right now, so it's not super critical that I get them. But yes, for any future marathon, I will be using gels. For my last marathon, that was part of the issue was I was using applesauce pouches, which are just not enough calories. It's like 60 calories per pouch. And so that's kind of why I hit the wall. I think that's my hypothesis, at least, in addition to all the other factors of just weather and course. But yeah, I do use gels and I would use them again.
So you talk about using the applesauce packets as potentially being a reason why you hit the wall. Could you explain from like a nutritional standpoint, what is the wall and what are the physiological effects that it has on the body
And the mind.
Yeah, so just once again prefacing that I'm not certified in sports nutrition or dietetics yet. So from my understanding, hitting the wall is when your body runs out of glycogen storage, which is basically just a storage form of glucose that's pretty quickly broken down and easily accessible to your brain and muscles. Whenever you don't have that anymore, your body is going to need the fat stores that you have, protein from muscle breakdown, available to make glucose. And that's a pretty inefficient process. It's called gluconeogenesis. You actually need more energy to go into it than you're going to get out of it from the glucose that you're producing. So it's not a super efficient way to make energy. Your body is still going to do fatty acid metabolism, but that also is not the fastest. So you're going to experience muscle pain, muscle fatigue, breathlessness, cramping, things like that. It's just not a super fun experience. And that's kind of why people will do carboloading, just to build up their glycogen stores and hopefully avoid hitting that wall. And that's also why we recommend eating whenever you're doing long races like that, so that you're kind of prolonging that.
That's terrible.
Down
That sounds
glucose.
absolutely horrible. And you've encountered the wall. I think in a couple minutes, let's circle back and we'll talk about the running things. But before we go away from the nutrition side of things, so we've talked a lot about nutritional needs. I'm curious if we could talk a little about hydration. So your average citizen, unless you end up in the hospital after your run, doesn't have access to IV fluids. So I'm curious if you have a go-to post-run hydration strategy, and I guess if you had any pointers from a hydration standpoint with regards to running.
Yeah, so I am not a huge fan of like flavored water, but sometimes I'll do liquid IV or other like powders that you can add to water. Obviously, people use Gatorade, people use Pedialyte, things like that. Honestly, it all depends on the person and how long you're running for, how much you sweat, and things like that. You know yourself best. If you go home and your shirt dries and there's like salt crystals on it, maybe you need more sodium in your hydration plan. But like, there's no one way to tell you how to calculate how much sodium you need. Unfortunately, we don't have like the access to sodium testing that and sweat testing that college football programs have. Because we've done that for football athletes, and it's crazy how much those guys will sweat and how much sodium comes out in an hour. But yeah, definitely getting electrolytes back in is important. So
I know with like vitamin C, if you consume too much of it, you just pee it out. You pee out all the excess. Is that the same case with salt, or is there like an upper limit to how much salt you should be consuming, at which point it gets like hazardous?
Well, if you're not a runner, you really should watch it, but
yeah, I mean, if you're a casual runner or if you're only running between 30 and 60 minutes a day, honestly, the amount of salt you're getting in your food is probably sufficient. This is for people who are training for a marathon, people who are running in the heat whenever it gets super hot outside, people who are sweating just a bunch. There is an upper limit. So I don't know like exactly what the hypernatremic level is, but off the top of my head, but there is a level of upper limit, and you're not going to just pee it out. You're just going to keep retaining water, and you'll just get swollen and it'll feel really uncomfortable. And yeah, it's not super great. So I wouldn't recommend like overdoing it, but I think if you do like 350 milligrams for every hour, that should be sufficient to cover anything that you're losing in sweat. Again, if you sweat a ton, then it's a little bit different, but in general, it should be fine.
So Francis and I are both proud members of Team Milk. This isn't a real team. It should be.
It's a team of two.
It's a team of two.
For now.
So Francis is literally a milk subscriber to, what's it called? Modern Milkman?
Yeah.
He gets milk delivered to his house.
Every Friday.
I drink a glass of whole milk after every single run when I get home. I found a study it was shared by Harvard University, actually. So I'm ad-libbing a little bit because I don't have it in front of me. But they found in the study, so they were rating the hydration benefit for different liquids for electrolyte replenishment and for fluid replenishment. So they measured the amount that you drink and then the amount of urine produced in a set window after you drink. And the idea was the less urine you produced, the better that liquid did at hydrating you as the control variable. And they found that skim milk was the best thing that you could drink after extreme exercise for electrolyte replenishment. What do you think about milk? Are you on team milk? Do you drink it? Do you recommend it? Do we get a professional endorsement of milk?
So I am actually lactose sensitive, so I do not drink just straight milk. But I will say that milk is great. If you can drink it, like, more power to you. And the reason I don't know the study that you're referring to, but just hypothesizing here, the reason that it might be better than others is because it has like carbs and protein, so it kind of slows that digestion a little bit, and it's not just going like straight through you like some of the other just straight drinks that just have electrolytes. That's just spitballing, I think.
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback. Sorry that you can't join Team Milk, but that's unfortunate.
You can always take a lactate though, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how that works.
I'm a milk enthusiast though, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I'm a dairy boy. I have a hat that says it, actually. Let's circle back then. So I mentioned hitting the wall earlier. We were talking about that. Can you tell us about some of the races that you've ran, including your marathon experience?
Yeah, so I have done several half marathons, and I kind of consider myself cursed because my time for all of them has been within 1 minute of each other, regardless of the race, the location, the weather, everything. So I'm looking to break that soon. We'll see if that happens. In terms of the marathon, yes, I hit the wall at mile 20, I think, and ended up walking the last 6. But I had my mom and my aunt there, and I had my dad. So we were like, I had my AirPod in. We were on like this group call. They were encouraging me through the race. It was a great time. Like, there were so many people cheering. I had fun. It was so much fun. But yeah, I definitely did not end it the way that I wanted to.
And this was Myrtle Beach, correct?
Yes, this was. So it was supposed to be flat, and it was pretty flat. And then the weather just kind of on us. I don't know if you're allowed to say that, but
Yeah, I feel like weather plays such a huge role in running. And I know with the weather being so up and down and around the last couple of weeks, it can be really difficult to have really consistent runs, whether it's like really hot or really cold. I find that even the difference of a couple degrees is sometimes the difference between like a really good run and a very uncomfortable one. I don't know why, but for some reason my heart rate gets really high whenever it's like even a little bit warm or I start to overheat. I'm sure there's a physiological reason.
Probably because you're out of shape.
I don't know if I'm out of shape. I've been running like 40 miles a week for the past 9 weeks, but yeah, no, it can be brutal. I feel like it's very unforgiving.
yeah.
Speaking of unforgiving, Lily, you live in Dallas, Texas. How the heck is it running in Dallas, Texas, especially in the summer? I went to Dallas 2 summers ago. It was 110 degrees the entire time I was there. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so I generally run in the morning because otherwise I would not run. It's just way too hot. So I usually go out like 5 a.m. and try and knock my workout out before it gets too hot. But it's just brutal. I mean, you'll wake up some days and walk outside and it just feels like you're like in soup because it's so humid and just so hot and it's just miserable. But, it's just part of living in Texas. So comes with the cheap gas.
Yeah, after running in heat like that, how do you recover? How do you get back into a functional state? I feel like that's incredibly traumatic for your body.
I just drink a lot of water, make sure that I get my electrolytes in, lay on the floor for a little bit, kind of soak up the cold from the ground, and then take cold showers. That's kind of my strategy.
I feel like with heat like that, it's surprising that your shoes don't melt to the asphalt or something. And speaking of shoes, this is a running podcast, so we'd be remiss if we didn't ask, what are you running in right now?
So right now for my training runs, I'm wearing the Vomero 8s and I really like them. I think they're super comfortable. But my top two are probably the Vaporflies and my Pegasus, I think 41.
One of the other questions I like to ask guests is desert island, one piece of running gear. What are you bringing? It doesn't necessarily have to be shoes.
Definitely Nike spandex. That's like the only shorts that I will run in. Or wait, can I add one? Actually, I'm going to swap this out because you said desert island. A chafing stick.
That's a good call. I actually don't have a chafing stick yet. I've been just vaselining up the old-fashioned way. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're getting a lot of mental images you didn't want, or maybe you want but you didn't know you wanted. You're welcome for that. So to wrap things up, Lily, I'm curious what your goals are for the coming year. If you're training for anything right now, if you have anything, I guess, on deck as a Nike ambassador, what's coming up in 2025 for you?
Yeah, so we have a race in June in Los Angeles that I'm kind of training for. It's a half marathon. So I feel like for that kind of distance, I mean, for me, I can kind of just like go out and run it just because I've stayed pretty much half marathon ready year round. But I do want to run the Dallas Marathon in December. So that's kind of like on my radar. I haven't started training yet for that, but yeah.
Is the LA half that you're running, that's the LA after dark, something like that, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I've never done a race in the evening before, so I'm a little bit nervous for that.
Weird time of day, especially as a morning runner.
Yeah. I'm going to have to do a couple training runs in the evening just to see how that goes, especially because usually I do all of my runs without eating before just because it doesn't make me feel super good. But obviously if it's in the evening, I will have eaten throughout the day. So yeah, that'll be interesting and a true test of my stomach.
It'll be interesting for Kate too, because Kate runs exclusively in the morning, and that means that I have to get up in the morning if I want to go run with Kate. And as much as I'm trying to become a morning person, we're just not there yet.
It's hard.
It's hard.
I feel like I'm more impressed by people who can come home after work and still go running. Because I think for me, going running in the morning is just part of my routine. But if I had to wait until after work, I would just be like, bro, it's so hot outside, or I'm so tired. So, I mean, props to you guys for running after.
Well, that's not something that, like, the heat isn't something that we have to worry about after a shift. I personally like it after a long shift. I feel like it's a really good opportunity to decompress and kind of collect myself and physically tire myself out, where depending on how the shift went, sometimes you're really mentally tired, but physically I feel very wound up. So I think it's nice to just round out the day, make sure that I'm like all the way tired, and then it's super easy to wind down and go to sleep after.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I feel like I could take a super long nap after I go running in the morning, so.
I do think that this is all we have time for today, Lily. Thank you so much for chatting with us, for sharing some of your wisdoms about nutrition, your experiences both as a runner and as a cool person. It was very nice to virtually meet you, and we hope to run with you the next time you're up in Boston.
Or the next time we're down in Dallas.
This was so fun, though. I love getting to meet you guys and talking with you.
And thanks again to Lily for hopping on the pod. This was really cool. But before we go, Brian, I've got a fun fact for you. Did you know that the ancient Egyptians were as old to the ancient Romans as the ancient Romans are to us? Kind of puts things in perspective. Thank you all for listening to the Zone 2 podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Instagram at the Zone 2 podcast. You can catch new episodes every Wednesday streaming on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.